Now that we have the ability to navigate from our index page over to the new page, we're going to move on to step 4, which is going to involve adding a form to our post new component. So the form itself is going to be pretty straightforward. We'll have a title, some categories for the post, and some contents to fill in for the post as well. After a user fills in all those inputs and taps save right here, great, we'll take that post data and we'll save it to our remote API. Now, building the form itself is going to be a little bit more complex than some of the inputs that we've dealt with previously inside this course. Because we have several different inputs in here, and we probably want to validate whatever the user puts into each of these inputs, we're going to use an additional library called Redux Form. Redux Form is all about handling any type of form that you put together with Redux, validating the input, and then submitting the form in some fashion. In this section, let's take a glance at the documentation around Redux Form, and then we will install it as an NPM module. So first, we'll take a look at the documentation. Inside my browser, I'll do a Google search for Redux Form, and I'll click on the first link that pops up. Now this is definitely one library where I really like to show you the documentation for, because the documentation is just fantastic. Really good documentation around Redux Form. If you go to the examples section over here, you'll see that they have examples for all different types of forms that you could possibly imagine that you would ever make inside of a web application. So they have an example with a simple form, with validation, with remote submittal, with wizard type forms, so like a multi-step form, with handling external widgets, just many different inputs or many different types of forms that you might want to use inside of your own application. So if you start working on your own app after this course and you want to make a form of any type, I really recommend you check out some of the examples inside the documentation here. Now to get started, wiring up Redux Form is a little bit more complex than some other libraries that we've used previously. So I'm going to scroll up to the top of this list over here on the left and find the Getting Started guide. So we're going to follow the exact steps through here, steps 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to go right through these steps right now for getting this installed. Let's get to it. First thing we'll do is open up our terminal, and we're going to install Redux Form as an npm package. So I'll run npm install --save redux-form, and we're going to get a very particular version. So I'm going to say at 6.6.3, like so. Okay, so while that runs, let's now flip back over to our code editor, and I'm going to find my reducers index.js file. Now feel free to read through some of the setup documentation. Essentially what we have to do here is import a reducer from the Redux Form library and hook it up to our combine reducers call. So internally, Redux Form uses our Redux instance, or our instance of the Redux store, for handling all the state that is being produced by the form, like the actual form that's getting rendered on the screen. At the end of the day, what Redux Form is really doing for us is just saving us from having to wire up a bunch of manual action creators. That's really all it's doing. So it's really just saving us time, and it's not really bringing any functionality in here that we wouldn't just be kind of otherwise writing ourselves, which is, I find, kind of interesting. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is import the reducer from Redux Form. Now to do this, they recommend using a little bit compacted reducer as form reducer. There we go, from Redux Form. So they recommend importing this reducer property as something called form reducer. So this as keyword right here is essentially doing the import of the reducer property and assigning it to this alias of sorts called form reducer. So anywhere else inside this file, we would not be referring to reducer, we would be referring to form reducer. Again, we're really just renaming this property. We're renaming the reducer property right here just in case we ever import anything else into this file called just reducer as well. Like reducer is kind of a little bit too casual a keyword, it's too generic. So Redux Form does recommend that we kind of set this alias ahead of time. Now here's the really important part of setup. We're going to wire in this reducer from Redux Form into our combine reducers call. The very important part is to make sure that we assign it to the key of form. So we'll say form is form reducer. All the different forms that we hook up inside of our different components are going to assume that the form reducer is being applied to the form piece of state right here. So it is really critical that we get that keyword correct. Okay, so that's pretty much it for wiring up Redux Form, but we still haven't really explained a whole lot about what it's doing for us. So we still have to kind of figure out exactly how we're going to make use of Redux Form at a very practical level. So let's continue and address that in the next section.